And then there was a gentleman by the name of Carlos de Souza, and he was an ultralight pilot, and he was also a geography professor in Sao Paulo, and he was going up to go ultralight flying with his friends early in the morning on January 13th, and he sees, and he's a pilot himself, he sees this object, this cigar-shaped object with a gash in the back, just like everyone else described, that was struggling to stay in the air, and he never once thought alien. He was like, that must be some sort of weird experimental craft, maybe it was government or Air Force, whatever. It's in trouble. It looks like it's going down. So it's really early in the morning. He turns off the freeway and he goes up to this place called the Miolini Farm. It was a dirt road. And he goes up there and he sees it struggling to stay in the air, and then it just goes boom and hits the ground. He's like, oh my God, the thing just crashed. They need help.
Aqui. Wow. Aqui, ó. Aqui, ó. Wow. Foi aqui, ó.
So he went up to the actual impact site, which was like a debris field bigger than a football field, maybe 2 football fields with debris everywhere. Half of the craft was still intact, and then the other half was just gone, like just debris bits everywhere. Got out of the car, and he's looking at it and again, never once did he think alien. That didn't even enter his consciousness, right? And he said he's looking at it, and he's like, these little bits everywhere, and he goes, the smell, like he was like, it's rotten eggs and ammonia. He grabbed his shirt and kind of pulled his shirt over his mouth. He's like, my God, the smell is so intense.
She immediately smelled ammonia. It was like rotten eggs, a very strong odor. I had to cover my nose with the shirt I was wearing.
And there was like kind of a liquid that he described, because I was asking like an acid or some sort of liquid everywhere that causing the grass and stuff to burn. And
he said it was acid, maybe
like
an
acid or something. Yeah, like some kind of liquid. And that caused, he was talking about the grass was affected by it. And actually, when we flew the drone over that exact alleged impact site, you can see it's different. The ground looks different in that zone than it does all around it. I mean, it really does.
Yes.
And he picked up one of the pieces, and he said it was like aluminum, really light, like you couldn't feel it. Very much like the Roswell people that described.
Always what you hear.
Yeah. And he said that he could crumple it up really light, like you could barely feel it in your hands, and then when he released it, it regained its shape.
It's the same thing as what Jesse Marcel said.
That's what he said, yeah.
It was weightless. You couldn't feel that you had anything in your hands.
And then he goes, then all these military trucks started coming in from the military base Ezra from the opposite direction, which actually just a few months ago we were there, and I took the drone way, way up in the sky and pointed it straight down, and you could see where the Ezra military base, the route that Ezra would come in from, and he came in from the freeway on the opposite side, and that's when he was threatened at gunpoint. He didn't see anything. Get out of here. He was like, I was just trying to help. Like, what's the problem? I'm just trying to help. I'm not, and that's when he said things got really weird. And then he got into his car and he left, and he stopped at a gas station just a few miles down the road to have a coffee and just kind of gather himself. And that's when an unmarked vehicle showed up, and they knew who he was, his name, his wife, his address, his daughter, like everything about him.
2 men approached me, dressed in black suits, all perfectly aligned, very tall individuals. They stood right next to me and asked me, are you Mr. Carlos de Souza, married to so-and-so, your daughter so-and-so? They described my entire life story right there. I turned to the man and asked, who? Who are you? What do you want to know? How do you know all this? It was perfectly clear to me. Listen, you didn't see anything, you just shut your mouth and you leave. If anyone ever asks you anything at all, you didn't see anything. You don't know a thing, or else things will get, no supposed to say, really weird for you. All right, so just get out of here. I was, at that moment, completely startled. It was a black or a very dark blue Opala, almost black, and without a license plate. They got in and drove away. They vanished.
That's crazy, because it's a level of counter intel response times
in 96.
in 1996, and they somehow know everything about your family, and it's right after you witness a crashed craft, and you drive a few miles away,
Yeah.
and they somehow are able to apprehend you there.
Yep.
Like,
The car that stopped had no plates.
did they have an accent, or was it
He said they were very tall, they had suits, and they spoke Portuguese. And sometimes there'll be one person speaking Portuguese, and there'll be a couple other people that'll just be silent in the background. And that happened in the case of Louisa, the mother of the two girls that came in direct contact with the alleged alien. And she's like, they were foreigners. Like, how do you know? Well, they didn't say anything, but they looked like foreigners, and the money was foreign. It was like American dollars in a briefcase. And he said that they were very intimidating. They said, you didn't see what you didn't see that, and if you ever talk about it, things are going to get very weird for you. Not that we're going to hunt you down and kill you. They're going to get very weird for you, which is kind of spooky. You know what I mean?
Do you think they were maybe like the proverbial Men in Black?
Well, it's so funny because I'd heard about these so-called Men in Black stuff dating back to the 90s when I was investigating. And I investigated the Phoenix Lights case, and a lot of the witnesses hate when you say Phoenix Lights. So they're like, it wasn't a bunch of lights, it was a massive craft,
Yeah.
I could see the compartments, it flew right over my...
Yeah, the governor has now admitted is real. And Kurt Russell saw while he was flying a plane with his son.
He said he could land his airplane on or something.
There you go, yeah.
So we're going into Phoenix, and there's these bank of lights, 6 lights, in the shape of a triangle going back right over the airport.
So I was investigating that case, and I was working with a woman who was like councilwoman Frances Emma Barwood, and I was interviewing her, and of course I was going after the governor, but at the time I wasn't getting any traction with that, and I was interviewing all the witnesses, and there was one guy, a Vietnam vet, and he contacted Emma Frances Barwood, one of the few elected officials, councilwoman that was willing to, hey, all she said was, let's investigate what happened, what these people saw. Like, let's just, and she was lambasted in the press. Oh my gosh, you can go see, they were making fun of her. This guy reached out to her, and I know this because I was investigating at the time. I was in touch with her, and he said, hey, I understand you want to know more about this craft. I'm a Vietnam vet. I was on my roof that night trying to get a video on a tripod of the Hale-Bopp comet because the Hale-Bopp was over the sky, and I have a CB radio, and I was listening to the truckers come up Interstate 10 from Tucson, and they were all describing this massive boomerang-shaped craft, and I realized, shit, this thing's coming right my way. So he said, I was all set up with a tripod and a camera, and I filmed it going right over the top of my house. Got great footage. Would you like to see it? She's like, yeah, I'd love to see it. So they make arrangements where he was going to drop it off at her office. I don't know if it was later that day or the very next morning or that night. 2 men roll up in an unmarked government vehicle in suits. And he goes, they were very intimidating looking. I mean, they were like in these dark suits. It was really hot. And the only thing they really asked me was, they said they were from France. They're like, we're from Frances Emma Barwood's office. We're here to pick up the video. And he was like, oh, I was going to drop it off, but I guess I don't have to. And he said, the only question they asked is, did he make any copies? And he said, no, I didn't. And so they took the footage and left. And a couple days go by. He doesn't hear from Emma. So he calls her up. He goes, hey, what did you think of the footage? She goes, well, what do you mean, what did I think of the footage? I didn't get the footage. He goes, well, you had 2 men from your office show up. She goes, I didn't send anybody around. So that was like the first time that I really heard about these so-called Men in Black, and that was in the 90s.
Yeah, no, this is made fun of,
exactly,
in the movie.
Exactly.
But Richard Dolan, you great UFO researchers, write about this phenomenon happening time and time again. You have another example, which you cover in the phenomenon, or I think in the program actually.
2 witnesses were out hiking. They then saw a large diamond-shaped craft hovering.
It didn't move, it just hovered in the air without making any noise.
The witnesses looked at this for a while, and one of them had a camera.
So when the jet came along, they sort of stuck the camera out from behind the bush and snapped 6 frames.
The 2 witnesses that took the photographs took like 6 prints, 5 prints, like color, points of reference, broad daylight, 2 witnesses, military jet in the background. Like, it doesn't get much better than that.
Mm-hmm.
And he's like, these men in black rolled up. They were having their cigarette break.
They were fucking spooks. They were men in black. And they stood outside in the pissing rain speaking to them.
So, any case, when I got to the Varginha case with the men in black, I was like, oh my God, these guys again. I'd heard, I could go on for 5 hours. It doesn't matter. My point is, I went all in on that.
Yep.
And I did cover a little bit with the 1966 Westall UFO incident, the landing, when I got a hold of Mr. Greenwood, the science professor. Well, that's a whole story about how I got him to go on camera. I remember when I arrived in Australia, all the seasoned UFO researchers were like, don't even bother. This guy will never come forward. We've been trying for 50 years. I said, just get me in the room with him. It is a great story behind how that whole thing goes. But he talks about these guys, the intimidation. They showed up at his door. They're in suits, like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Some unmarked government agency threatening him, like putting the fear of God in this guy. And
Yeah.
so then
But if you talk to Richard Dolan about who the Men in Black are, he seems to think
OSI?
No, well, this is really trippy. He thinks it's like counter intel on behalf of the NHI or the aliens or the ETs. Because if you think about it, the level of rapid response,
It's
the
unbelievable.
ability to show up and like,
Unbelievable.
kind of know everything about, like, it's either like in 1996 we had way more of like think about 1996, the consumer internet wasn't really a thing. Like,
Yeah.
who knows how much information the government, like maybe the U.S. government had a lot of information on its citizens, but did they have information on a citizen of Virginia, on this guy who's a pilot in Virginia and a geography teacher in Sao Paulo? Probably not,
Yeah.
And then the ability to show up a couple hours after he had seen this crashed craft. So DeSouza, did he see any beings
No.
with the crash? He just saw the crash.
Just saw the crash, and I asked him. I said, "It was the section that was still intact. Was it big enough to have people?" Oh, yes, he said, no question.
Yeah.
Now,
Did he see inside it?
not that I'm aware of.
Okay.
Yeah, I didn't ask him that question. That's a good question.
Yeah.
I think if he had seen inside, he would have told me. But he said there was and he wasn't there for very long, but just a few minutes. But the section was intact. That was still there, and it was about half. Half the size of what it was when it impacted.
This year, upgrade your system to a workspace that keeps your team from shattering across dimensions. If you've ever tried to schedule a meeting across 5 time zones and 6 platforms, you know the absolute horror of losing people to the ether. It's a single streamlined command center for calls, notes, transcripts, chats, even AI summaries. An all-in-one shared reality, yours. No vanishing, no fusing into calendars, just your team, fully entangled and synced across time zones, timelines, even caffeine levels. Try Quo for free, plus get 20% off your first 6 months when you go to quo.com/Jesse. That's QUO.com/Jesse. Quo. No missed calls, no missed customers.